Eddie the Magic Monk. Eddie the Magic Monk. Eddie the Magic Monk. Eddie the Magic Monk.
Hey guys, it's Eddie the Magic Monk. Welcome to another Excel VBA tutorial. Today we want to talk about how to use Excel to create folders. And you might say, well, why don't I just go right click, new folder, new folder? Why don't I just create my own folder? Why would I need Excel to do it? Very simple. With Excel, you could have hundreds of folders you want to create. Click a button and it'll just create them using the code. So you could pre-enter all the folder names into Excel rather than having to go right click, new folder, put in the folder name and keep doing that 500 times. All right, so how would you do that? Well, let's create a new Excel file. So right click, new Excel worksheet, and I'm gonna call this create folder. Okay, and double click on it. Now here's a very important step that you have to do. Okay, you have to go file, save as, and we're going to save in the same location, but we're going to call it macro enabled workbook and click save. And you can see here we got a macro enabled workbook and you don't need the other one anymore. So I'm going to get rid of that. That's just a temporary file, ignore that. So that's very important. If you don't save it as a macro enabled worksheet, it's not gonna, the macro that you create is not gonna stay there. I've already made this with the original extension and I lost all the code. So make sure you don't do that. So save it as a .xlsm file or a macro enabled file. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new button. So you're gonna go to developer and you're gonna go to insert and choose the first button there and make the button nice and big, and the button has to point to a macro, so I'm just going to call it create folder. That's the name of the macro. Click new. Okay, and it's already named the macro for us. So here's where we're going to type in the code to create the folder. So what is the name of the statement that we're going to execute? It's called mkdir. Now another thing that I haven't talked about is at any time you press F1, you can find the documentation with all the list of commands, which I'll show you in a second. mkdir bracket. Okay, and I'm just going to make it super simple for now, but I'll make it more complicated later. I'll explain the deeper concepts later, but this is basically going to make a directory or make a folder called Eddie. Okay, so I'm going to save this, go back. Okay, I'm going to rename the button, call it create folder. Okay, click out of it, click the button again, and you can see a folder called Eddie has been created. Okay, but there are a few things wrong with this code. Okay, there are a few things wrong with this code which we're going to fix. Firstly, it's not specific enough. What folder do you want to put the folder Eddie in? We want to put it in this folder, right? So the code for that, okay, the code for that is called active workbook .path. Okay, active workbook.path, because if you don't say that, okay, and let's say you have a few spreadsheets, it won't know where to create the folder called Eddie. So because create folder is currently active, we're going to put it inside this the same folder as where this active workbook is. So, and then we're going to use the and symbol, and then we're going to use the quotation mark / quotation mark and another and. So what does this mean? It's going to give us active workbook.path, which is the same as this path here. So you can basically imagining copy and pasting this and putting it here. Okay, that's the folder. Another slash, because that's the convention for putting a slash at the end to signify that we're going inside that folder. And then within that folder, we're going to create the folder called Eddie. Now, just to make it a bit different, I'll say Eddie2 this time. Okay, so I'm going to save that. Okay, you might need to click the stop button because it errored out before. Save, close. Okay, let's click create. Okay, now Eddie2 shows up. If you click again, it'll error out because we haven't got any mechanisms in place for when we create the same folder name. Okay, so now we're just going to make it slightly more advanced, and we're going to acquire the name of the folder within the spreadsheet, which is the ultimate goal of this task. Is we want to get the name of all the folders that we want to create. So I'm going to say enter folder name below, and I'll give it a border so people know to put it in here. Okay, so enter folder name below. So let's say they call it John. And I want it so that when I click create folder, it'll retrieve the value that's in this particular cell and create the folder for that. Okay, so how we do that? Well, let's get the code again. So let's go to Developer, Visual Basic. And rather than saying Eddie2, I'm going to replace this with cells, bracket. Okay, and what this does is it retrieves the value within a particular cell. So we're going to get the value from the second row, the first column, right? Second row because it's on this row. The first column because it's in column A. It's not in column B or C. It's the first column. So to put that in here, I will enter 2, 1. Second row, first column, dot value, because we want the value in that cell. Okay, we're not wanting the color or the width or the length. We want the value of that cell. Okay, so let's now save this, close it, click the button. Okay, and you can see John shows up. And let's call this John 3. Create folder. Works. Put a bit of space in there. John Sanders. Create folder. Also works. Alright, so that is the first part to creating folders. Next lesson, we're going to talk about how to create multiple folders. So we should be able to fill all the way down to whatever number you want, as many as you want. It'll create the folders. Okay, that's next lesson. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.
Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.